Audi has sold literally millions of Q5s around the world and over 55,000 just in Australia. And that's what makes this new version such a risk, because the previous gen car was really popular, even all the way past its prime. But Audi has started from fresh with this one. It's all new from the ground up. Was it worth the wait? Well, come with us and we'll find out.
The new Q5 is quite a bit more expensive than it was before, but it also includes a big hike in standard equipment and is now hybrid across the range to account for that. See the prices on your screen now. The new entry point to the 5 variant range is the TFSI front-wheel drive petrol. From there, there's a TDI diesel all-wheel drive in 2 trims, and then the turbo V6 petrol SQ5 all-wheel drive also in 2 trims to top out the range. Audi says the all-wheel drive 4-cylinder petrol model is planned to arrive at a later date, as is a plug-in hybrid and Sportback Coupe variants, so stay tuned for those. For now at least, standard equipment is impressive with large alloy wheels, leather interior trim, and the 14.5-inch multimedia touchscreen and 11.9-inch digital dash standard across the range. Other highlights include wireless phone connectivity and charging, a 360-degree parking camera, and tri-zone climate control. Stepping up the range scores you larger wheels and more S-line bits to go with the all-wheel drive powertrain options, and there are also a modest array of option packs. To read more on these, check out our full review over at carsguide.com.au. Where does the Q5 sit amongst its competition? Well, despite the price increases, it still starts lower than entry forms of the BMW X3 and Mercedes-Benz GLC, while still sitting above equivalent versions of the Lexus NX and Genesis G70. So it seems fairly priced for a 2-wheel drive premium midsizer from Germany.
Design-wise, it's been a bit of a significant change this time around, because the Q5 has a new platform and that's sort of altered it in terms of its overall shape. It's lost that bubbly, wide appeal of the previous gen car, which seemed to please a lot of people, and it still keeps a lot of those Audi elements which I quite like. So it's got this kind of grille in here with these modern sort of dual tone fittings. Then it's got these lights which are much more deeply inset into the bumper for a much more contemporary 3D look, and these DRLs are also quite animated. As we work our way down the side of the car, the way that these lines are sculpted along the length of the body, taking advantage of that new platform, makes the car look a lot longer and a lot less bulbous than the previous one. And then over here, we've got a whole set of new wheel designs. So these ones look very traditional, but apparently Australia is one of the biggest markets just for Audi wheels, and there are so many different choices you can pick from on this new car. Some of the coolest stuff though is on the inside. In here is where some of the biggest changes have been. The first thing you'll notice is this massive curved panel here with really nice HD touchscreens that are really fast and easy to use as well. And on the interior, most things feel very modernized in here despite some familiar hardware. You've got a little digital shifter down here, you've got these familiar bits of Audi hardware on the steering wheel, you've got the contemporary little logo on there as well, and there's some good storage in the doors and on this center console as well. The one thing you don't get though is physical buttons for the climate controls. Yes, there's a volume dial, which is nice to have, but all of the climate controls work through a permanent panel on the base of the touchscreen, and it'd just be much nicer to have actual physical buttons for when you're trying to concentrate on the road. So that's a bit of a shame, but on the whole, this space does feel quite upgraded compared to the previous car, very contemporary kind of styling, and of course visibility, just like the previous Q5, is really tidy. Let's go have a look at the back seat. All right, in the back seat here, as you can see, as usual, the outboard seats are pretty good. That's behind my own driving position. I've got plenty of room for my knees. I've got a relatively decent amount of headroom in here as well, although I was surprised to find it's tight in some dimensions. For example, there's this huge center raise to facilitate the all-wheel drive system in the transmission here, which is much bigger than I've seen in other contemporary vehicles, and that makes it a really difficult pitch to put an adult in this center position because they simply have nowhere to put their legs. There are a few good things in here though. So obviously there's quite a bit of amenity. You've got bottle holders in the doors. You've got a further 2 bottle holders in this drop-down armrest. As usual for Volkswagen Group vehicles, you've got a third climate zone in the rear here, which is independently controllable, which is really nice. You've got adjustable air vents there as well, and USB-C outlets too. You've also got nets on the backs of these front seats, although it does have a bit of a hard finish. And this second row is on rails, although even in its furthest back position, it's still a little tighter than I'd maybe like.
The upswing of that slightly cramped second row is the benefit of a large and useful boot area, which you can see the figures for on your screen now. Sadly, there's no spare, just a tyre repair kit under the floor.
All right, so from the launch of the new Q5, you've got 3 powertrain options. All are quite familiar, but with a bit of a twist. This one here is the base 2-litre turbocharged front-wheel drive version. It gets the renowned EA888 engine from Volkswagen Group, and see the power figures on your screen now. Next up is a 2-litre turbo diesel, again quite familiar, but that one is all-wheel drive. See the powers for that one on your screen now. And then at the top of the range, of course, the SQ5 returns with the 3-litre V6.
The biggest change here is the addition of hybridization across the range in the form of an electric motor which runs alongside the 7-speed transmission. Now, Audi calls this an MHEV Plus, but it's more than a mild hybrid system as we usually understand it, because it can genuinely drive this car a little bit under electric power. We'll talk more about that in the driving section. The new hybrid system saves surprisingly little on the fuel front, which is perhaps why Audi refers to it as an MHEV rather than simply a plugless hybrid. Regardless, fuel consumption is still pretty impressive for a premium midsizer, ranging from just 5.4 litres to 100 k's in the most efficient diesel all-wheel drive models to 7.6 litres to 100 k's in the most thirsty V6 SQ5. We'll have to get the Q5 back at a later date to see how those official fuel numbers compare to the real world.
All right, so driving the new Q5, it immediately becomes clear that this is a different vehicle from the one that came before. The platform is completely fresh and feels it. There's a new feeling for the suspension, new feeling for the steering, and all in all, it is a bit more sophisticated than the car that came before it, but I also think in some ways it's a little bit less resolved as well. The steering feels a little bit extra electrically assisted no matter which drive mode you choose, which feels a little unusual and unfamiliar for Audi products, which usually have pretty tight steering. And then there's the ride quality, so it's much more comfortable than the previous car, but it's also not as resolved, I feel like. It's more comfortable, but doesn't have that really tight sort of control on the road that the previous car had. For example, when you're going over sort of dips and divots, it feels like the front end kind of loses a bit of connection to the driver, and that's unusual because we've gone through a long period of most Volkswagen Group vehicles, not just Audis, having a continuous cycle of improvement. So for there to be some areas of the car sort of stepping back when it comes to the way it feels is a little bit unusual, but this is an all-new platform, so there's probably some more calibration and ironing out the brand will do along the way. It's just interesting to find how different this is from the previous car. Now, one of the other biggest changes is the addition of the hybridization on that powertrain. So while Audi calls this a mild hybrid system, it can genuinely motivate the whole car under purely electric power. It's not as much electrical assistance as you might get in a Toyota or a Lexus, for example, but it genuinely can drive the car electrically. So we consider it to be a full hybrid system, and it feels like it genuinely helps the car along. It's got that little moment of smooth acceleration as you start from a complete halt, unless you really need power, and then the engine will start from the get-go. But also it will coast for quite a while with the engine off, using that electric motor to just top things up. So it's an interesting system, it's very well integrated, and it feels like it's helping a lot, despite the fact that on the fuel consumption front, it's only trimming less than a litre per 100 Ks. I reckon it can probably do more, but we'll have the car back on a longer test to find out. The other thing I quite appreciate about all of the drivetrain options, having sampled them all, is they're all really good. You can't really go wrong by picking the petrol or the diesel, or of course the SQ6, which feels awesome. But it's the fact that these drivetrains are so close together and that diesel is so nicely refined. Other things we've noticed in our time with the car, the safety suite is quite laid back. It's not too invasive. I have had the occasional moment where the steering does tug quite a lot when it's trying to keep the lane, but other than that, it hasn't been too annoying. There's no invasive driver aids when it comes to that driver monitoring system or the traffic sign recognition or anything like that. So on the whole, it's pretty good. How does it hold the road? Of course, it holds the road pretty well. There's good tires on all grades, although that moment when the suspension is kind of bouncing around where it feels like it disconnects from the driver a little bit on that front axle can be a little bit disconcerting, and that was interesting to find. All engines sound really good, and they have a really nice smooth acceleration, something which is helped along by the addition of that electric motor, which helps remove things like turbo lag, which we've experienced in previous turbocharged Volkswagen Group engines. The transmission is also super tight and it shifts nice and cleanly, and that's something that we've always liked to see in these dual clutch autos. And with the electrical assistance, it removes that moment of initial hesitation when you set off.
The Q5 gets the usual exhaustive list of active safety equipment. You can read more about that over at carsguide.com.au, although there are some nice now standard inclusions, like that 360-degree parking camera. The Q5 doesn't yet have an ANCAP score, but it is rated to a maximum 5 stars to the Euro NCAP standards over in its home market. Expect Audi's pretty average 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranty, although it is offered with a very appealing 5-year prepaid service plan at $3,520 for the standard variants or $3,560 for the SQ5.
So there you have it, the new Audi Q5. Yes, it's ground up. Yes, it's quite a revolutionary change this time around. I think it does have a couple little areas where it could use some polishing, especially from behind the wheel. But on the whole, if you've had one of these before, you're gonna love this one. It adds so much stuff on the interior. This platform is quite a radical change. Would you pick one over a BMW X3, a Lexus NX, or a Mercedes-Benz GLC? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And as always, remember to check out our full written review over at carsguide.com.au.